Good evening. Welcome to Korean Finger Hearts, the K-drama podcast where I'm going to be, I say discussing, but I'm not really discussing. I'm going to complete fanboy out on Korean love dramas. I don't think there's a name for it, is there? K-dramas that are the cotton candy love romances. But they're what I like, so it's called Korean Finger Hearts because, you know, this is the hearty thing. If you don't know, in Korean culture / in the K-drama realm. So I am your host, the Seoul Man. I'm laughing. I actually did a podcast for Korean dramas, for K-drama. Actually, it was more than the romantic stuff, but over time I realized I only cared about the cotton candy, wonderful romantic stuff. So it was called the Seoul Man. That'd be me. But there's very little Korean going on here. There's a lot of Korean going on there. These two. And it was the audible bubble bath for your soul. It was strictly an audio thing. So I had these Rode microphones because they're very sensitive to how you talk into the mic. And then now that, of course, the world's moved on, it's been several years since I've done the Seoul Man, and now it's Korean Finger Hearts because a couple of reasons. I've been wanting to redo one of the great passions of my life, which is to watch these Korean love dramas. And originally, when I was doing the audio only one, I was doing episode not really recaps, but I was pulling out individual things from each episode. So I'd go through the shows episode by episode, and frankly, it was a lot of work. And I'm not sure there's real value there. AI didn't exist back then, and now you could just get whole entire show recaps. I think it's a lot more interesting for me to discuss what I really, really, really like about the love romance K-drama things. And we're to share that passion with people, because when you converse with other people that are into this genre, you wind up sort of celebrating the same basic sort of things that touch our hearts and make us feel positive about the outcome, as well as how it impacts our lives, to guide and give us some framework with which we idealize and hope that this is the way things would actually work, as completely unrealistic as it is. Actually, I'm going to do an episode about how ridiculously unrealistic and stupid these things are and why I love it. That's essentially the whole podcast. It will continue to sort of be on that vein, which it's easy to punch holes in it. And actually, after I watched a lot of them, I did have a bit of a crisis moment where I realized this is not only it's not supposed to be real, but it's almost like bad training for us in the real world to think that these outcomes or dynamics or expectations of your partner, and you can just throw that all out the window. I mean, I can walk out the front door here and get all the reality I want. And so I kind of came back to it full circle, because I want the Oooey Gooey cotton candy version of things. I want to believe that this is true for some, if not all, couples, myself included, that these sort of romantic entanglements, with their difficulties and with the societal pressures and all the stuff that are presented differently, sort of formulaic, but always the K-dramas in Korean and Japanese, and really, frankly, anything from the except for the United States, is so well written and so well acted that, initially when people start talking about K-dramas, why they like them, it invariably goes to, I care about the characters. The acting and the writing is just absolutely amazing. It's somewhat unpredictable, even within the formula itself, whether I'm talking the formula within Korean love dramas. But it's just so well done that you're able to not only love, appreciate, or in some cases dislike, the characters. But when you care deeply about them, you care deeply about their outcome and their happiness, and essentially are rooting them on for the most part all the way through. And there's a lot of places where they make sure they give you just enough to keep them in a positive light in your mind, even when they're struggling or they're not doing exactly what you want. So that's why I think when you first start talking about K-romances and K-dramas, people first talk about the production value of it. I mean, it's a highly polished, fairly large machine at this point that's been at it for a long time. But aside from it's presented and very professionally produced at an extremely high level. That's amazing how much content they produce at that level. But that veneer falls away pretty quickly, and then you're left, when you have conversations with people about these wonderful shows, you're left with, you just absolutely love those characters. Most of the time you're rooting for them to live happily ever after. I personally have a top 10, and I'm going to be sharing that as we continue to watch some shows. So why is Dynamite Kiss here on the screen? Because I've been gone a couple of years, and I was podcasting pretty hot and heavy there during the crash landed on you era, we'll call it, when Netflix first started getting the K-drama / romances. I mean, the K-dramas, it's the zombie flicks and all of it, but the cotton candy romance is the part that I love and care about. Hit the Netflix scene, and while I know a lot of people that are into K-pop, I live in Tampa, Florida, and I run an anime store. So the worlds collided, and because of this, a couple of my friends were very, very into K-pop. A couple of my close friends, way more savvy, and sort of through osmosis and just being around them, I got to learn a lot about, some obscure ones. I have friends to this day that know 10 million times more about K-pop than I do. Actually, I know shockingly little. But what happened was, in the store here in Tampa, there was a BTS concert. I'm recording this at the end of April. So here in Tampa, there was a 3-day BTS concert. I think it was Friday, Saturday, and then they added a Tuesday. And just a flood of people were coming into my anime store. And I was having just these incredibly wonderful conversations about this stuff. And, I was like, oh, yeah, BTS. Because BTS is basically the Beatles at this point. I almost went to a Monsta X concert. That was my one claim to fame, with the lanyard and the little light and the whole thing. I didn't actually go. I think I bought the ticket and couldn't attend for some reason. But anyway, K-pop intersects with these Korean dramas only in that the soundtracks for these shows are just absolutely amazing too. The music is just so sentimentally wonderful, but also each of the big shows get talent, sometimes the same sort of talent, but also new up-and-comers and independent people are allowed to get in there because they need to produce a lot of it. But I find the music, I have it on my Spotify. I was at the gym this morning and listening to K-drama stuff from this show. I mean, it's not thumping, high-energy beat stuff, but it just I was so enjoying the music because I love the Dynamite Kiss. Here we are, and I'll talk about that shortly. But again, my purpose of the podcast, starting it back up, is not to episode by episode or convince you. What I'd like to do is, in a much shorter version than we're doing today, because right now I'm doing hey, I'm back, and this is my background, and this is where I'm going with it. In the future, I'd like to only give spoilers for the first episode, because you can watch a little preview of it. Dynamite Kiss has a little preview of the next episode at the end of each episode. So that alone is its own spoiler. I actually don't watch them anymore. I zip through them so I don't see them. But I will talk about the first episode somewhat, or about the show generally speaking, about where it ranks for me and in the pantheon of the pitter-patter of my heart, and which ones really, really stuck with me and had not only a wonderful time watching it, but in many cases, this is why I'm so passionate about it. Many people that watch these are life-changing. I'd say my expectation for myself as a man in some cases is guided. As unrealistic as it may be, it illustrates how male-female relationships generally should work. And because we're in the United States, and I'd say the dating culture, hookup culture, and a lot of other negatives that are so highly pronounced right now, when you then go look over at the Korean, even if it's idealized, the thing that's always fascinating about K-drama romances or K-romances is, to this day, I've never been to Korea, so everything I know about Korean culture comes from these things, which of course is not exactly realistic. Doesn't mean I understand what's really going on. But even though I've never been to Korea, I can only imagine that they couldn't produce anything like these shows, or the Korean audience would just find it completely unbelievably ridiculous and stupid. You can clearly get at the society issues they're facing, about the chaebol societies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've kind of learned enough from watching the shows and just done some research about the challenges they face. People, like here in the States, people getting older, either not married or single for whatever reason with kids. And so Dynamite Kiss kind of handles that a little bit. But the thing that I love, and I think most people love about these shows, is it's very old school, respectful, clean and pure relative to the dating culture that we typically have, at least are famously celebrated, or what's a more negative term for that? Do you want to disassociate with it? Where ever since I've been watching these K-dramas, you very quickly realize, even without knowing much about Korean culture, is that the holding hands, you might as well be married. I mean, if you're holding hands with a girl, you're in. I mean, you don't, there's not only you don't need to have sex to actually solidify the relationship, but if you get all the way to the part where you get a kiss, you absolutely are going down the altar at that point, right? Now, obviously, in a world full of lots of people, including in Korea, this is no doubt not exactly precisely how it works, but it must work well enough to be believable to your Korean audience that they don't find this laughable and like so naively innocent that that doesn't exist. I do think a little bit like the Hays Code with the United States in the 30s, where it kept overt sexual stuff out, that they no doubt are sanitizing this to keep it sort of a dreamy cotton candy thing. But I still believe that it must represent the basic society with which we can at least admire, if not try to emulate, just the incredibly wonderful, heartfelt love between two people that have to overcome things but stay true to themselves and with a sense of integrity honor and want to be with your partner. It's like one of those phrases someone told me that was kind of impactful is, you shouldn't be with someone because you want them. You should be with someone because they want to be with you. And then, of course, ideally, you both want to be with each other. And many of these K-dramas, that's the case, although usually, like in real life, one is pursuing more than the other. And sometimes it's a girl and sometimes it's a guy. So as relates to, let's see, I'm in my swivel chair. As relates to Dynamite Kiss, there, let me hear. You can see our little cute faces there. Dynamite Kiss, let me start. I'll give you this, not just the one episode recap, but so for me, every one of my top 5 and probably my top 10 shows, I'll give you a spoiler alert, my favorite show ever, because you always, when you love this genre, you calibrate with people so that you can see, well, do I agree with this person? Do they like the same stuff I like? And I think it's pretty generally universally true that if not the greatest K-drama romance is likely, it's almost like honorable, like it needs to be retired because it's so wonderfully good, is Crash Landed on You. Now, it is not my favorite. It is just sort of honorarily almost needs to be everybody's favorites because of when it came out, what happened with the characters. Wink, wink. I try not to give spoilers, but anyway. So my top 10 has been crafted over some time, although I haven't seen hardly any of them in the last year and a half or 2 years because, again, I fell off of it, except for I saw Tastefully Yours, which is in my top 10. But my favorite K-drama romance, just to sort of, I'll put a list up at some point with my top 10. And then also, as we're talking about future shows on the Korean Finger Hearts here on the podcast, I will show you, where it ranks for me. Basically, if it's not in the top 10, it's not going to really matter, right? Maybe I'll have to do top 20 because as stuff drops down, I may love 15 or 20 of them so much I can't possibly just never mention them again. But my favorite show, after 3 times of not telling you, is King the Land. Just absolutely love that. King the Land, so good. I'll tell you, Tastefully Yours is up there. Business Proposal, way up there. Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. Crash Landed on You. There's so many really wonderful ones, but I do definitely am left with which ones really stuck with me, and that I and a lot of times I did it with Dynamite Kiss. There's moments where I'm sitting in my chair, because I usually watch these things alone. I'm sitting in my chair watching this, just absolutely clapping and just like, yes, I'm just so excited for them. And I'm like, yes, because the show feeds me what I'm wanting out of it, usually. And when they're having some strife or it's not going well, I'm literally so tempted to fast forward to get to the good ending because I need a happy ending. Anyway, so I have, I'll tell you where I'm at with Dynamite Kiss. I have 2 episodes to go. It's turned to the point where I kind of want it to turn, but I don't exactly know what happens. And the last 1 or 2, so this is a 14 episode thing. A lot of these shows are 14 or 16 episodes. Rarely do they ever have sequels. Again, a little bit of this first one's going to be longer. My future format be quite short, just talking about what I got out of that first episode and how much I like the show. But I will typically watch most, if not all, the show before I do this. But Dynamite Kiss got me in the very first episode. Like, I was all in. And that's happened with every single one of my top 10. I'm all the way in early. And that doesn't mean there can't be a slow burn or you learn to like the characters. But I think it's because the writing, the acting, the lights. I do photography as a side hobby very seriously, so I really pay attention to the cinematography or the photography. It's all so good that I don't know if it's the same cats that are doing it, how many people are involved in the whole industry, but they've got the formula down such that you're normally not only hooked from the story because it's based on either a webtoon or wherever they got the original material from, but not one of them was something where I'm like, or had to tell a friend, well, watch the first 3. It picks up. I've never had it just immediately. And I feel that way about myself is I've watched a couple where I watched a couple episodes and stopped watching it. Now, that may be unfair to the show. It's just my personal consumption of these things. And, of course, the ones I like are pretty universally the ones people like. So it's not like, my list is some oddball thing that nobody cares about. But Dynamite Kiss had me from the very beginning. And Dynamite Kiss is going to become it's definitely my top 5. I haven't given a final ranking for it, but I'm suspecting we're top 3 with Dynamite Kiss. Now, this is high praise because I don't willy-nilly yank them out of there just to replace it. I think you need to have your sort of Hall of Fame pantheon that a show has to really do well to kick one out, right? And so Dynamite Kiss got me from the very beginning. And one of the things it did really well in the beginning, so let me start how I got back into just watching these things again, was the BTS concert. People came in, and I talked to a couple of just amazingly wonderful people, all women, because it's like, and I think I'm the only guy that watches K-dramas. One lady said her husband was seriously into King the Land or Business Proposal, 2 of my top 3. And I was already like, I want to hug that dude, It's like another dude seriously loves my top couple with some of his favorites. So I understand that men obviously watch these things, but clearly the audience is largely female. But the girls, when I was talking to the girls, and I was thinking about going back and doing the podcast again, instead of being called the Seoul Man, we'll call it Korean Fingerhearts. I got t-shirts made. I mean, I've got a fancy logo coming. We'll update that. Christy Kennedy does all my logos for me, and I'm so happy that she's decided to engage with doing the Korean Finger Hearts logo. So we'll have a nice logo. We'll sell t-shirts and stickers and stuff. So I'm really excited to move forward with this and branding it in a way that focuses on what I like about these, which is the syrupy, ooey gooey stuff. And once I had a discussion with the gals that came in for the BTS concert in the store, and sort of communicated what that was my interest in these things. Then we were calibrated, and they were giving me, I was writing down stuff that I'd missed in the last couple of years or just hadn't watched. And, one of the gals' top recommendations was Dynamite Kiss. So it's a good sounding name, Dynamite Kiss. And the reason it was interesting was I had said that, thinking about holding hands and kissing, is that the production for getting the kiss scene done is absolutely amazing. I mean, in every show, there'll be like fireworks and like, there, we got it here. Where's the picture? Yeah, see, there's fireworks. There's a green screen. Or they'll have hearts and emojis, and it's all super slow motion. The cameras rotate around and it slows. It's so enraptures you because, again, the kiss, this is not American stuff. This is a kiss means everything. And if you kiss somebody and mean it or whatever, and the other person doesn't reciprocate or the timing is off. So it's not that every single one of them turns absolutely magical by default. In this show, and again, I try to avoid spoilers, but this is covered in the first episode. In the very first episode of the first minute of the show, which is why it's not a spoiler, she's having a fantasy of being a highfalutin CEO in an office, and this studly guy that you can't quite make him out comes in to propose to her. And they have a highly, highly close-up of the guy's lips, just his lips. And Korean skincare is really good because this guy's lips looked really, and I'm completely straight, but his lips look really sumptuous. It's like, it's like, yeah, this is a guy's lips you'd want to kiss, right? And then it focuses on her lips, and then they come together and kiss. And then the point of telling you the story about the beginning of the show is that is not the Dynamite Kiss. That is a fantasy dream she's having, and she wakes up and she's on the bus or the train. I think it was the bus. And wakes up from this fever dream, essentially. And And the best part about it wasn't that the kiss was this manufactured thing, but even the fake dream sequence kiss was done in the method that I'm talking about. And yet they sort of they took your expectation and pulled it from the very beginning, that the kiss. So the show is called Dynamite Kiss, and they understand how important these kisses are in the show, and yet it was just a big giant tease. But what was really interesting about it, and one thing I really admire about Dynamite Kiss, I think it has done the best job of giving us the polished look. This is I gotta get out of the way of these people. How do we get out of the way here? I gotta twist this way. They're behind me. The people behind me. I'm bad about reversing the mirror here. The hair is done. Guy's wearing a $3,000 suit, expensive watch, super nice. Every show's if the guy's rich or the girl's rich or whatever. It's always this class distinction between the haves and the have-nots. Largely, not only. It's not all Pretty Woman. Although she's not a prostitute. Anyway, it's that they're always prettied up. Like, I love Vincenzo, and I don't think the dude's ever not slicked up. I think he's nonstop in the Italian suit. He's rarely got a hair out of place. Now, he does. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but essentially you only really know Vincenzo as this really, really, really well accoutered man, and who's just gorgeous and nonstop. Where with Dynamite Kiss, when she wakes up from that fever dream, she's on the bus in like regular work mode. So her hair is like normal, dresses normal, and she dresses a little frumpy because she's hard on her luck. Certainly not wealthy at all. And you get to see that while she's a very attractive girl, she's not the girl she just was in the fever dream, right? And so I think that's where one time when I've been to Japan many times, and when I was much younger, because I've been into Japanese culture and movies since I was born, practically. One time, when I was very young, I realized that all Japanese people once upon a time thought all Americans looked like movie stars. That's all they knew was the guys from the movies, and everybody's beautiful. So I think, obviously in the K-dramas, you got these sundry cast of characters it's always the leads are the beautiful people, and everyone else is just kind of, middling to normal looking, right? But in Dynamite Kiss, she wakes up, and she and the main lead and a couple other characters, but mainly the two main leads, have at moments appropriate to their position, their station, their job, and their situation, have moments where they're glossed up. They're just gorgeously. He buys her, like we've seen this a million times, but he buys her a dress for this party, and again, I'll leave the spoilers alone because that's not episode 1, but then many of the other times they look like normal people, just like totally normal people, good-looking normal people. Come on, they're still good-looking actors, but they're not nearly as good looking. So I wanted to mention that because I called a close friend of mine, Lydia. Her and her husband, Dominic, he's Korean, and that is a good looking dude. But I have never once seen his hair slicked back or wearing an expensive suit. He's just kind of a normal, wonderful guy. But I was called her today because I'm going to do an episode about real people I know that look better than the K-pop stars. And it's a grand total of one guy, but he's just an amazing looking guy. Now, you may not look at him and just go, absolutely amazing looking guy when you saw him, not because he's bad looking. Of course, he's a very attractive guy, just literally running around on a day-to-day basis. But because when you watch Dynamite Kiss, you can see the difference between his slicked up version and his regular version, and hers especially too, right? And when you see this sort of, it's not really a transformation. The show just does a good job of giving us a little more of a real slice of life feel to it, that they have to go through grooming. And, obviously in the real show, they're having, makeup and hair people and all that. But, they make it look like they're having a bathroom routine and using some Korean skincare. But when I see Dominic in his regular mode, because I've seen so many of these K-dramas, I completely can switch him around. So I'll do a whole episode about Dominic, I think. And that's the kind of hilarity fun that we will have. And that goes to these shows pull out of us, and we put ourselves in that situation, or what would I do, or how would I really enjoy that, or is that how I'd like things to go? So inserting ourselves is largely the fun, and because it's pure and clean with hand holding and kissing is all that really normally goes on. The other big difference about Dynamite Kiss was you have that fake kiss in the beginning, but the kiss is normally this thing that's built up to at the very, very end, because again, once you're kissing, normally, you're going down the altar at that point, and that's more toward the end or the very end of the show. Well, here there's a fair amount of kissing going on. I remember at one point, one of the characters, one of the secondary characters is not the main girl, but one of the other secondary characters that says, I don't believe in abstinence before marriage. And it's coming on to the guy to basically say, we can get busy with it as an enticement to try to get him to marry her. And that's about as racy as it gets to even mention that somebody would just go willy-nilly or at least have sex outside of marriage. And again, I understand it's an idealized version even in Korea, but that is about as schmutty as it gets. They'll sometimes get close to having sex and either don't. It's not that sex doesn't exist and it's so sanitized from it that it's artificially silly, but it's believable enough that their character is pure enough and there's a standard of behavior that is honorable, traditional, but also respects both parties, especially the woman, right? So that's why we really like these shows and why I love them is that you're rooting for true love to prevail. You also like to see how that circulates within your own mind and your own life and the past that you've had maybe and what you'd like your future to look like. And so they're idealized in the best possible way. And again, as I've said, when I left it for a while, I could go out the door anytime I want to. There's a door over here. I can go out the door anytime I want to and get a face full of reality. And like many of us, we've had a face full of reality. I've had a belly full of reality sometimes. So not only is it wonderful escapism, I actually believe that these outcomes are possible for people. And that's where I'm going to do the episode about Lydia and Dominic, because they're high school sweethearts that are going to be together forever, clearly. Like two completely beautiful people that look better than these two. So wonderful, such wonderful people. So I have an example in my real life, hence why I'm mentioning them, but I think it's possible for us all. Now, in Dynamite Kiss, with many of these shows, typically the guy's wealthy, but they typically has some childhood trauma that needs to be resolved. There was a car accident, parents abandoned him, the overbearing parents or grandparents. There's always something wrong. That onion gets peeled back, and you find that the guy behaves in this way because of he's honor bound to take care of his mother. In some shows, again, I'm trying to be specific to Dynamite Kiss, and this requires sensitivity, and also typically he'll either hold it in or the girl will allow him to communicate this so that they can understand each other better. So it's not only the woman needs to be accommodated with her trials and tribulations, and the guy is not strictly going to hold up a black credit card and fix the day. That does happen in many shows. But so of course there is a financial aspect to it. Dynamite Kiss does a very good job of giving you just enough sentences that ground it. When the character does something untoward or uncool, they self-reflect, or someone will call them out on it. Now, it may be kind of brushed over because they got to get on with the main story and get it back, but they'll almost always couch it in some way that is self-reflecting, or the person will take responsibility for it, ask for forgiveness on their knees, or whatever it takes, or just an internal dialogue that we're privy to that shows that their intentions were pure. And they had to do what they had to do in certain circumstances, but it wasn't meant to hurt anybody else. Largely, the characters are framed like this, which allows us to continue to root for them and also to align ourselves with them and hope that our behavior could be as honorable under duress, even if it's a comical, farce of mistaken identity, which a lot of these things have too. So that's it, guys. Dynamite Kiss. I wish, because I just back to podcasting, I need to come up with a formula that I can present to you. Like, I bet you in 6 months, it's like, okay, here's this section of the podcast. But this one, I just want to be a lot longer format, just talking about coming back to it, how much I absolutely love Dynamite Kiss. And I wanted to thank the gal that came in my store and recommended it to me. I told her King the Land would change her life. The Dynamite Kiss definitely has, because it's got me all the way back in. It's pulled me back to where I just can't wait to watch more of them. And then it's inspired me to start talking about and running TikToks and Instagrams and the whole routine and getting Christy to design a logo. And I'm very excited to be back into it for myself personally, to consume it, but also be able to share that with you. And we will have a back and forth later, chat rooms and whatever. We'll get everybody else involved in what their top 10 are. And if you want to discuss, off of the main me talking to you on these formats, we can have a back and forth dialogue, which is really what the fun is to share it with your friends, fan girl out, which in my case is fanboying out. It's just so much fun when you talk to people that like these shows, that what I just said, what I like about it, what I think these shows do well, is what everybody gets out of it. So you're associating with and having discussions about essentially the purest way that love can be expressed. And that's why these things are so successful and why I consume them gladly. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for joining my first episode back as Korean Finger Hearts. It's a great show. I guess if I'm going to leave you with it, I'll say this is Dynamite Kiss has moved to number 3. This is my 3rd favorite, and I will produce a list later on when we get more doing it. All right, guys, thanks for joining, and I will see you on the next one. Oh, I think I'm supposed to say like, subscribe, and all that stuff. I'm so new. Come on, really? Okay.